Welcome to the Coachers Podcast. Coaches, athletes, parents, and fans, this is your vault for inspiration.
How's it going? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time as a listener, thank you for joining us. If you're a reoccurring listener, thank you for joining us once again. If the subject and the contents of coaching, leadership, and team is something that you're passionate about and resonates with you, think this channel is a great fit, think this podcast is a great fit. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Have a great day. How's it going? This is Keanu Yamamoto with the Coachers Podcast, in here with Coach Legi Suiaunoa, D-line coach for UCLA football. I had the opportunity to coach or be his GA at Oregon State. Coach, thanks for jumping on. Please tell us about your family, journey, background, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, thank you for having me on. This is an honor to catch up with you again. Obviously, I appreciated you during our time together. So just getting this time to come on the podcast and catch up and talk about the journey, man. I appreciate the time and the platform to do so. Shoot, I think if first start, I think when you said family, well, I think God done blessed me. This is probably the best part of my life is what God blessed me with the wife, Rose. We've been together for, I'm going to get myself in trouble here for some time. We've been good. We've been blessed with 5 kids. So I have a 16-year-old son. They are actually all back in Michigan. So I'm transitioning over to Los Angeles, where I'm at UCLA now, working with the D-line. But they'll make their way over at the end of the school year. So we're looking forward to the time we get where we're all back together. And so, but I can be, one thing that I do know, this journey has been really good to me so far. And a lot of that has to do with the family that I have.
Yeah, no doubt. Can you kind of tell us about just kind of your overall journey, obviously where you went to college, kind of what your thought process was coming out of college and then wanting to get into the coaching profession?
Yeah. So, I was fortunate to play football and got an opportunity to go to the University of Nevada, where I played. Obviously, like every 18, 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid in college, you wanted to play football forever. When my career ended there at Nevada, I went there for one reason, that was to play football. School was something you had to do along the way. Didn't really realize, didn't have any plan for life after football. So I hung around there quite a bit trying to figure it out. I came back to Oceanside, which is in San Diego County, and started hanging around at our old junior college. So I'm a junior college product and played at Palomar. So I was hanging out there with the football team, just trying to figure out what's next. And J.G. Agater, who's an OG, everybody in that area knows who he is, talked me into coming in and helping him out at Palomar. And so once I started helping him out, man, I just opened the door that I never thought was there. As a player, you kind of see what the coaches do and their time and kind of how that was. And I remember telling myself, like, man, I don't want to do that. That's just, I don't know how anybody would want to do that, right? But that instance, he opened that door for me, and then it opened up, obviously, some feelings and passion and that I had for the game that I thought left when I was done playing. And then from there on, I had an opportunity to go back to Nevada for my old coaches. Coach Agater was actually pretty close with that whole staff up there. So they gave me an opportunity to come back, be a graduate assistant there. And so I went to Nevada as a GA. And then from there on, got my first time job at Western Washington, which is up in Bellingham, Division II school. It was probably the biggest, I would say, learning opportunity for me when you get your own first room coming out of being a GA. So that was a great experience for me. So I spent 4 seasons there, I believe, and then came across a lot of great coaches. I was surrounded by some really, really good coaches. I had an opportunity. Western Washington actually shut the program down football-wise, and then had an opportunity to go to Eastern Oregon for a season, to Portland State, and then went to Montana and was at Montana for 5 seasons, and then got an opportunity to go to Hawaii with Coach Rollo. Gave me an opportunity there, spent some time there with Coach Rollo before getting a phone call from Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. And then the last 8 seasons I was with Coach Smith before getting this opportunity here at UCLA. So that's all together is 25 years of coaching ball. And so God had done blessed me with a great journey and surrounded me with some great people to keep me going.
No doubt, Coach. Tell me a little bit about the why. You mentioned, when you first started off at Palomar, there was kind of a refound passion, but what is the why behind coaching and why that's sustained throughout your 25-year career?
Yeah, I think, when I first started coaching, I think the why changed throughout the years. As for me, at least, my experience. So for the first reason I got into coaching was not necessarily the right reason. I got in there selfishly because I still wanted to be a part of the game, and I got in there for obviously the accolades I could create for myself, being a ball coach, part of being part of it. So over the years, though, as you start coaching and learning and being around some, I was surrounded by a lot of great coaches to where now my thought process is that, man, I don't have a better job, and there's not a better job than what I do. And for me, at least, reason being, it merges two things that I'm really passionate about. Number one is the game of football. That's really what started this thing. And then number two is just the opportunity to serve young men. And I think over the years, that's become more important than the actual football piece of this thing. Football piece is something we do. It's something that started this whole relationship. But as the years go on, you understand that, man, it's more than just football. For the young men that come in or we come across, it's just a phase of their life. And what I've come to know or come to learn is the fact that how much impact can I add to this young man's life during our time together? Whether he's a transfer, it's a 1-year guy, now that's part of the deal. Junior college guy, which is a 2 or 3 year guy, or a high school guy who's there for 4 or 5 seasons. That's their portion of their life. What can you help? How can you add value to their lives during our time together to help him along the way for the rest of his life? And so that's why I coach, because I still love the game of football, a piece of it. I loved every single part of it, the fundamental works to be a good football player. But then even twofold is the fact that the opportunity to help serve men in that other role. So in terms of just how can I help them along the way to chase success in their mind. And I think there's the life lessons that a team sport teaches you. So, and I think there's a lot to be learned during our time together, especially in that time of their life before they leave our time.
Can you kind of talk about at what point in your career did that philosophy mindset shift kind of take place? Was it Western Washington, Eastern Oregon, Portland State? What point were you like, oh, okay, this is what it's about?
Yeah. So I think I've coached a lot of, I've been fortunate to be around a lot of good football players. And oftentimes that relationship becomes stronger not because of who they are, but what they can do on the football field, right? During the times. And as a young coach and during my early years is that you have to pay attention to those that can help you. Right. And on the football field. But as you grow, as you get older in this profession or as the years go by, you come to find out that, hey, the guy that never played a down or the guy that was the third string guy, his value is just as valuable as somebody else that plays a lot or a non-American that you come. Because at some point, this game comes to an end, right? And it hits you in your face here when you start running into when players end up not getting that dream of playing in the National Football League. And I coached at a lot of places where, hey, it was a slight opportunity, but most often not in this game. That's not a reality for a lot of the players that come in and play. And so when they're done playing, I often judge, obviously, the job that I've done by how they respond outside of that. Because some of the things that I think happens or what happens as an athlete is when you're done playing, you can solve a lot of problems when you're playing football. And a lot of your problems are on the football field. And it often masks a lot of the things that you don't get, that don't show up until you're done with football, because you can solve them on the football field. And I talk to our players quite a bit about, as long as there's some privileges that you're presented with as a college football player, especially at this level when you got a P4 logo on your chest that's afforded to you, that I would hope that you would take advantage of. And it's not necessarily football-wise, but the network that you go. People cheer, people know your name because of that logo on your chest. Academically, the resources that you're afforded, right? The tutors, the classes, the majors that's afforded to you, those things are all presented to you. I think during your time, when you have that logo on your chest, is that don't just chase being the best football player you can be. Chase how those other opportunities, how you can maximize those. In the day and age of NIL now, it's like, hey, you're getting those deals because of that logo on your chest or the name of the school on your chest. Well, when your time is done and you no longer have that helmet on, those deals disappear. And I think there's a point where, hey, I've learned that those deals don't have to disappear. They can just be an extension. Now, you're not playing football for them, but you could be working with them, yeah. I think. And so those opportunities in terms of that mindset of it's more than just football and making sure that everybody in our room is valued. Head coach that I've been fortunate to work with, the last couple of places that I've at, aligned that way. So I've been really fortunate to be in an environment where that's alive and present, where, hey, we want to be able to coach guys to be the best football players they can be. But ultimately, we want to be able to add value to their lives to be successful. Um, and be able to be for them to add value to the society or the community or their families as they leave our place. And why I do this thing is that every player matters. It showed up even more so. Wife and I came. Wife flew over, and we went to a former player's wedding. This guy played for us. Oh shoot, 15 years ago, I think. I don't know how long ago, but it was during my time in Montana. And so we went to his wedding, and the amount of players that showed up to the reunion there and at that wedding, man, and just seeing how well they did in their own life, and then just hearing some of the stories of it took them a while to get there, right? Like after college, what did you do? Because a lot of these guys, we've lost touch, we've texted, but we don't really, you're not as connected as you are when they were playing for you. You don't see them day to day. That you start to hear some of the struggles they went through as soon as they were done with college and what they were not prepared for, right? Like that all adds to, hey, what could I have done better? Right. And I think as a football coach, that's got to matter to you. So when did it happen? I think once I started to get a group of guys that were done with college and starting to run into them again and figuring out what they were doing, or phone calls that we get back like, hey, coach, I'm struggling, or hey, can you help me with this? Or hey, can you be a reference for me for this job? That's when you come to find out, man, you're going to coach a lot more businessmen. You're going to coach a lot more teachers. You're going to coach a lot more cops. You can coach a lot more entrepreneurs than you are going to coach NFL guys. That's just the reality of the matter. And so that's still important. We want guys to be able to reach the National Football League. But at the same time, in our program and our approach, how are we teaching these guys to be professionals in other areas of their life?
Yeah. If you could go back and give young Coach Suiaunoa any advice, or give any up-and-coming coaches that want to enter the college profession at the Division I level, what would that advice be?
I think early on in my coaching career, I would say one of the things that I could definitely do a lot better of is not necessarily a relationship, but a deeper connection to these players. I think for them to truly, when I first started, it's all about ball, right? What can you do for us? What can you help the team win? Well, I think the coaching, for me, the advice that I would give, I think my younger self, is the fact that you work just as hard when they're in the building as you are when they're out of the building in their life, whether it's school or just their personal relationship. And you're not there to, I'm not saying, hey, you need to know every single thing, but I think you got to be there's still got to be some piece of you where it's a safe place for them to come to in times of need. I think that relationship, it's got to go further. It's got to go roots. And I think that takes time, but I also think like our everyday interactions with each other has got to be able to go a little deeper than just football and what you're doing and how's this class going. It's just being able to grow deeper roots where, again, I think this day and age and what these players have to deal with, they have to deal with a lot with being in school and just this age, this time with the social media world. Like these guys deal with a lot. Oftentimes as a football player, you try to solve a lot of players try to solve a lot of these problems on their own, and just being able to be in a position to where, hey, that you can be a safe voice for them in times of need outside of football.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, Coach. And it's something when I look back at, working at Boise State and working at Oregon State with you, that I wish I did a better job, especially when I was at Boise State. I mean, first time GA, wife and I just got married the year before. We just had our baby during fall camp. So I was kind of drinking through a fire hose, in three different directions. And I feel like I didn't pour enough into the players. I had a good relationship with those guys. I was able to connect with a lot of those guys, but my main goal was there, like you were saying, was like I wanted to impress upon the coaches and show the coaches that I could do a good job. And then at the same time, I wanted to get my job done as quickly as possible and doing it effectively so I could go home to my wife and my kid. But at the same time, we're getting out there 12 o'clock at night, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, because this is our first time as GAs and we suck at using Visio and drawing scout cards. But that is one of my regrets for, not realizing what was important in those early days. And that was to, pour into those young men and, develop relationships with them. And like you said, just be a safe voice to them. Tell me a little bit about, some of your greatest moments or most proud moments within the coaching realm.
I don't know if there's one single event. I think there's some that are more memorable than others, but I would say that some of the greatest victories, I think, that I've experienced during this coaching worlds, in this coaching journey is I think just it doesn't necessarily happen then, it happens afterwards. I think one of the things that I appreciate is the fact that I've helped somebody in their journey to be successful, who they become. And so that's some of the greatest moments. But, obviously there's football, Victor. I mean, the journey of a player coming in and we've all had players not doing so well early on. I've been fortunate in my coaching career that I've been at a couple places where I saw somebody come in as an 18-year-old student athlete player, and then watch him walk across the stage, 4 or 5 years later. So I had some stints where in college football where hey, I've been at places where I've seen that journey from start to finish. And I think that's probably some of the most memorable ones is that one where you see them all the way through. And some of them made it to the National Football League. Some of them walked across the screen and got a degree. It's some memorable victories, being able to accomplish something together. I think our time at Oregon State, during that season, we're fortunate to do really well, and I don't know where we finished. I think in 23 or 22, we finished, I think maybe top 10 or whatever it was, to where, 2 years earlier, we couldn't buy a win during that time. So and we didn't do it, that was kind of before the emergence of the transfer portal. So those same young men that was in that locker room, that was in that building, when we only won 2 games, were the same guys that were there when we won 10 games. Yeah. Holding the trophy at the end. And so seeing that and that enjoyment and just understanding what they accomplished during their time there at that place was incredible. So I would think it wasn't, obviously we got a lot of memories being part of some championship teams, old championship teams, but as a coaching world, I think more so is just having joy in other people's success. I think that probably brings me more joy than anything.
Yeah.
Going back and reminiscing, like I said, it's been a while, into the wedding we went to, my wife and I went to, and just hearing the stories and their experience was during our time together and their experience afterwards. That's what brings a lot of joy to me. And obviously, that's what coaching is to me, is something that you can leave a long lasting impression on somebody that way. But those are the events, so that brings a lot of joy to my heart.
This is kind of a 2-part question.
Yep.
I want you to think about, what the greatest challenge is within coaching, but I want that to be pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal era, because I do think those probably presented a lot of different challenges now. So I guess let's backtrack a little bit. Let's go pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal era. What was the greatest challenge within coaching, in your opinion?
Well, I think the greatest challenge in coaching is also the best thing about coaching to me, because what I hate about it the most is what I like about it the most at times. I think the greatest challenge to me is just that each year is different. In terms of just what one roster looks like versus the next, what that season before and the season afterwards, right? Like that opportunity. Because one thing that happens in college coaching, as guys leave the building, new guys come in, and it's never the same team. I like it because it's different every year, but I also dislike it because the amount of work and obviously starting over again. Whether you have everybody coming back or not, it's still a different team. And present with a different team comes different challenges. Challenges that was there the year before are not the same challenges that's going to be there the year afterwards. But at the same time, that's also why I like it. Because it's not I think I've been in coaching, part of me being in coaching long enough to knowing that every year is different. It's exciting. I've never really sat in an office job, but I would assume hey, every day is the same every year, in terms of what the role is, what the season looks like. When you're dealing with coaching and it's a people business, there's different people brings different challenges. And so I think that's the biggest challenge is knowing that not once, just at the end of the season, you have no idea what's going to happen the next season. And you have an idea, but you have no idea. Recruiting, what that roster looks like, even injuries that could happen, like all the challenge that can, academics, somebody leaving, now the day and age in the portal, hey. And so you got to be able to adjust as fast as you can, and then you got to be able to find answers as fast as you can. What you did really well as a defense the year before is not necessarily what you're going to do really well the year after that. But you don't know that yet until the season happens. Mm-hmm. You go in there with the mindset hey, we've done this really, really well. This has been a really, really good call for us. Well, the year after that, different people, different dynamics. You might not be as connected, or you might be more connected. And so those are the challenges I think is probably hardest in football. But it's also, again, it keeps us on our toes, keeps us fresh, keeps us young, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. Going back to just a schematic example, when I first got there, down my bottle was 15 for 15 for you guys on third down, and then the effectiveness in 23 was not the same.
No, not the same. Yeah, the success rate.
Not the same. Why is the sport of football the greatest sport in your opinion?
Well,
You got the smart water. I need a smart answer here with the smart water.
well, like I said, I think it's changed over the years. I think partial to football because it was something I played personally. I like to think that I know how to navigate through the game of football, which puts you in a comfort zone to where, hey, I know how to answer some things. I know how to fix some things as a coach, even as a player, right? You know, in terms of, hey, if I take a bad angle, I'm going to lose. If I take a good angle, and I know how to take that good angle. And so, but I'm going to take it this way in the sense that I do believe, I mean, the game of football is I think is the best because there's not another sport that involves that many people. You're talking about the roster, you're talking about the support staff, you talk about the staff that it takes. And I'm naive to, you know, I don't know every single sport in the world, but I do know that, hey, in the roster, like our roster is probably 120, 125 guys. You got another with the coaching staff and the support staff are probably 50 to 60 people. And we all got to work together to make sure that we have a successful product. And so, and not everybody plays, right? And so when you're looking at about 120 rosters, only 11 on defense, 11 on offense. You got probably another 11, you know, they could off and on special teams players and doing those things. And so when you look at the numbers, there's a lot of players, there's more players that are not playing than that are. And then you look at even the support staff of roles. There's some that are directly affected by it, like us coaches. We're front line, right, in terms of the players and making sure that they do what they need to do. But there's also some support staff that's just as important, but they're not in the front line. You talk about the dietitian, nutrition nowadays. You talk about the strength coaches, right? You talk about the guys, your role, the support staff guys, are analysts and GAs that break down the film and obviously do a lot of the work that really don't come to light a lot of the times. But at one point, though, in the game in this game is the ultimate team game, because at some point we got to find a way where everybody's valued in their role. Because in order for them to do their role to the best of their ability, they got to make sure that they understand the value of their role and what it does to the team. So it's a complete unselfishness in what their role is, because their role is important and their role does have an effect on the team. And so why is it the greatest game in the world? Because I think you just affected about 200 people. And you talk about the landscape of college football across, not just the Division I roster, but you talk about Division II, Division III, that there's not another sport that affects that many people in terms of just working together, being a team together to be able to accomplish the same thing. And so I believe in the fact that that the team sport, and like I said, not to say it like the team sport, I don't know if there's another sport that involves that many people, that the team sport that football is. Everybody there's a lesson that everybody, I mean, the failures that you get from when we lose a game, it's not necessarily on the players, it's on the coaches, on the support staff. We all eat it. And then now it's say, okay, what can I do in my area to help alleviate that? And so in the training room, you know, like, hey, how can I get the players back on the field as fast as I can? Players and coaches, if we didn't do an efficient job of preparing our guys, we're going to lose ball games. And so even in the game, right, there's a lot more practices. There's a lot more energy that's exerted throughout the year just for 12 games. Right? Because you only get 12 opportunities to see if you're right or not. But then you got the whole year calendar of prepping for it. And so those roles it's not a seasonal role. It's a year-long role that they got to do it for a long period of time. I also think the team sport, like I said, because of the amount of people that's involved in this thing is, as a player, your role to the team is vital in the fact that, hey, if you didn't get it done, or you didn't do it to the best of your ability, it may or may not hurt you, right? Because there's times, hey, I may lose the gap on the backside, but hey, the ball's on the front side and never found it on the backside, right? Or it could be the worst of that, where, hey, I did lose a gap and the ball hit it and it's a big play, or I didn't do my job to the backside. So, I mean, just the connectivity of what a team takes. If you're doing a good job as a program, and all those guys are connected, like that's going to mean something, whether the ball hit their gap or not, that you didn't do your job at that moment in time, right? Well, I think those rules still carry over. I believe in the lessons that the football field teach you, or a team sport teaches you. in the fact that, hey, if you're part of a workforce, right, outside of the football field, as you get older, if you don't do your job, you hurt the company. And if really you don't do your job, you get fired. And I've said this thing before. I think one of the things that football does, and I say it to the players all the time, is that this is a great practice for life. Because we have practice. If you don't do your job, you get to line up and you learn how to fix it. Well, in life, sometimes you don't have that second chance. And so I think before you step foot in the real world, you had a lot of practice at failing and trying to figure out how to fix it. Also think, right, in terms of, especially in practice. In practice, you're probably going to fail a lot more than you're going to have some success, right? And it's not necessarily that you failed; it's the fact that you got to be able to you respond, and then not only respond is just uh, being able to find a way to get it right. I think that's what life does to you, right? You're gonna fail at life at some things. You're gonna fail at some things, and then just trying to find a way to acknowledge it. Number one, number two is just find an answer to get it right, get it fixed as you move forward.
That's a great answer, Coach. That was a great answer. If you could sit down with any coach, who would the coach be, and what's the one question that you would really want to ask that coach?
That's a tough one. Coach, I've been fortunate to be coached by a lot of great coaches during high school career, and I probably didn't understand the value of this coach for me until obviously later, part of my years. And I tried to, and then obviously a little bit busy and he got retired. Herb Myers was my high school head coach and had a lot of success as a head football coach. Now he was tough. Now he was really, really, really tough. But I never really had, in my coaching there, I never sat down and I really had a conversation with him about coaching. Because by the time I got into my coaching career, he retired. So I played for him during the tail end of his coaching career in high school. Now, he was still around. And then when I got into coaching and I felt the importance of, what he did and who he was and how successful he was, I never really sat down and really talked ball with him or just talked philosophy with him. Part of that is Coach Myers was tough. You look at him the wrong way, he let you know about it. So that I've answered that before, in terms of just all the championships he's won. Being in where I went to high school in Oceanside, it's a fluent area where you got a lot of different cultures, in that area, and how he was able to bring those guys, everybody together, the team. And then I think one of the challenges, I think you answered earlier, is that every year was always different, especially in high school. Every year is different. And then what he was able to do program-wise to make sure that he kind of kept that program alive. So that's one. But I would say this, now that I've been at UCLA and just walking up and down the halls here, and just learning about some of the great coaches that's been around here. I don't know them much. Obviously, you know about John Wooden, who's obviously had a lot of success here. The name that comes up around here is Terry Donahue and what he's done as a coach here. That's probably one I would say, since I've been here and just learning more now that I'm at UCLA is just, Coach Wooden. I think everybody kind of read his book. One of the ones that I think that had a lot of success here. And the coach, I really learned, I think Coach Smith was the one it was Coach Smith. That showed us a video about Sue Enquist, who was a softball coach here. And I remember watching that video, and that video did something to us. And he was talking about fear of failure. I think that was the video of Coach Smith that showed us during that time. And so I've carried that video all the way along. And so I would say probably Coach Sue Enquist is probably more so than Coach Wooden, just sit down and kind of, and if you remember that video, it's just being able to handle
You're talking about the failure response system?
Yes, the failure response system. And kind of how she came up with that. And now that she said it, because I've watched her talk a couple of times on it, but I think she'd be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. If I were to come and watch your indies, what do you want me to take away from your identity within your room, just from how you go about your indies?
I think this is more so like what I like everybody to come across, right? And what the players would like to feel for you. Number one is if you come watch me coach football, I think I would like for you to walk away with the fact that you know that I care about these guys, number one. I think in order for them to be the best football player they can be, I think they got to understand that I really, truly care about them. I think number two is that I'm positive. And so in coaching, right, it's not necessarily knowing, and when I say being positive, I'm not patting these guys on the back and is the fact that I got to be able to instill some confidence in them, instilling some confidence in them because they're going to do a lot more wrong than they are right on a football field. And my job is to make sure they acknowledge that. It's doing it in a way that where, hey, I don't shatter confidence, right? But I do it in a way that they understand They understand that, hey, this is wrong and we got to find a way to get it right. With every criticism, there's got to be an answer, right? That's the positive part, right? In terms of how to fix it. Right? And so it's not necessarily just pointing out what's wrong, because that's what we do as football coaches is we make a living telling, right? telling players what they do wrong. And so just doing it in a way where, hey, this is wrong, but this is how you can get it fixed, right? Over and over. And you got to do it over a consistent basis. And number three, it's going to be demanding. And so it's hard to be good at anything. And so the expectation on how we do it is not necessarily the drill that we do, but it's how we do it in terms of just every little detail gets coached, every little thing. And it's hard to fix everything. But what that drill does, that I know exactly what I want to get out of that drill. And that's the coaching point of that drill or whatever it is. And these guys get hit on it. And then I didn't learn that. I mean, that was something that was put into me when I worked with Coach Rossi, the last place I was at, and he kind of put that out there in the air, and I just felt like, man, I clung on to it, and that's something that I would like to be able, when guys watch us practice or watch me practice, is that when they walk away, it's like, man, Coach Lange cares about those boys, and he's positive. And then number three is just that he's demanding. It doesn't mean, like I said, it's all rosy. In fact, you got to be able to handle hard coaching, but I think there's a way to do it without chatting or without chipping away at somebody's confidence.
Yeah, that was a great answer, Coach. I forgot to tell you this before we got on. I don't know if you saw the script I sent you. My daughter always comes up with a question for the guest of the day, and I was supposed to give you a heads up on it, so it didn't catch you off guard.
No.
But the question was, what is your favorite sea animal?
Sea animal.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can go. I mean, you lived in Hawaii. I mean, you're a freaking island boy. You can talk about what you like to eat, and then you can talk about what.
I was gonna say, is it a favorite sea animal to like pet, or is it a favorite sea animal? Well, man.
I think it was more so to just in general what your favorite sea, not to eat, not no mahi mahi.
Because that's where my head was going. My favorite sea.
Yeah.
Well, shoot. Let's see. Well, my kids Octonauts has been big.
Same.
So in our house, so with the little ones especially, and it really started with the older boys, that it just carried on. Whatever sea animal, I think he's an octopus. Octonauts is those little sea creatures, and for the reason that usually when it's on, there's peace and quiet in the house. So.
I feel you on that. Same way. We're the same way with Miss Rachel.
Yep, Miss Rachel is huge.
Danny Go. That's another big one. All right, kind of segue into a little bit more college football specific type questions. In the season, let's go. What does a day in the life of a college football coach look like? Let's go Monday.
Okay,
actually
Monday.
Check that. Let's go Tuesday. Monday is usually off day for the players. That's why. So let's go Tuesday.
Number one is it's important to acknowledge, like, this year is completely different. First years are always completely different than every other year. So I'm gonna speak generally, in terms of. Because obviously when you're part of a new staff and you're trying to build something, there's a lot more time and a lot more hours, getting able to work. So, but typically when you're in the groove here on Tuesdays and you're talking about in season for us is Tuesday really falls on a lot of times depending on where your off day falls, right? Some programs have Sunday off and Monday you'll be working because we're mandated to have one day off, completely off for the players. And some use Sundays, some programs use Sundays, some use Mondays. The last couple of staffs I've been on, it's been Monday that's been the day off for a lot of the players, which I like. Enjoyed, I like the fact that the players get a weekday to where, hey, they got a dentist appointment or they got some things they can handle. It's an academic day where academic buildings are still open to be able to get the extra help that they get. Tuesday, it's a practice day. So typically what happens is if you're morning practice teams, you have early morning practices. Depending on what time those practice starts, those meetings could be at 7 in the morning. It could be at 7:30 in the morning. My job as a position coach is to make sure that these guys are ready for practice on Tuesdays. So there'll be times where, hey, I may call them a little bit earlier to meet so we can have some extended meeting times. Typically from, I would say, about 6:30 to about 8:30 is usually that, meetings or breakfast, that type of deal, depending on what that schedule looks like. On the field, usually by 9. Now, mind you, right, for a 6:30 meeting, for me, I'm a morning person a lot of the time, so I like to get up in the morning. But even the players are probably walking in the building about an hour before because of treatments and doing those things. So their day usually starts at 5:30 or maybe a little bit, if you're really good at it, depending on the process. We got players that walk in right before that happens, right before meetings happen, which typically means they're not really prepared for the day just yet. But so we got practice. After practice, typically you come in and watch the films. Really from I'd say from 6:30 to right around 11:30 is meetings and practice. Typically, you have a little bit of time after practice. Now, for us coaches, it depends. If we have a recruit on campus, you got to entertain them there for about an hour before you meet as a staff in the afternoon, to watch the tape, evaluate. And so you do any kind of corrections from the tape, watch the staff, then you get ready for your meeting, because typically we bring them back at the end of the day. Usually depending on what the class schedules are, usually about 5 or 5:30 or 6, so depending on what that time is, to meet the guys to clear the tape. In between, like I said, you watch the tape as a staff. You do some recruiting, phone calls, letters during that time, until meeting times. And then after that meeting, typically you come back and you work on a different phase of the game plan. So Tuesdays typically has been, and we haven't gotten to here at UCLA, but it's pretty universal. Tuesdays are usually rundowns, play action downs, early downs, first and second downs. And so that's really what the game plan is for Tuesday's practice. So that's done before Tuesday's practice. Tuesday night or Tuesday evening, usually Wednesday's practice is situational. Now you're starting to get into third downs, your third down, medium, long, that situation. And so it might be 2 minute. And so depending on how you want to schedule a game plan situation. So Tuesday night, that's what you're doing. You're studying, watching. Now, as coaches, like that game that starts on Sunday, right? It just, you're not necessarily having those discussions just yet until Tuesday night. And then Wednesday is pretty much the same schedule in terms of the morning. Usually about 6:30 to 11. You're doing football stuff before the guys have to go to class, and then you work at night, or come back and do the same thing. Watch it as a staff, meet with the players in the afternoon, and then you start on your Thursday game plan of that portion, which is usually goal line, red zone, short yardage is what I'm naming situations we did at our last place. It might be a little bit different here, so you game plan. Usually the game plan, different places, and I'm speaking generally here, is that game plan could take up to about 9:30 at night sometimes, because a lot of it is, and it's not game plan all the way through, right? Because one of the things that's got to be that's got to be addressed is that in the evening time, there's still recruiting that's got to be done. Recruit calls you, you got to walk out and go answer the phone. So there's a lot of, you you want to get some football time, but at the same time, there's still a lot going on for that to happen. And then you get ready for your morning meeting, because that morning meeting, you're installing the game plan a lot of times. And so usually when you're done game planning, now you're getting ready for your meeting, to install the game plan. And then Thursday is the same series. You practice that game plan Thursday. Thursdays, it's typically kind of been a family night for different places that I've been at. So you practice. After practice, you meet, you clear practice, you do some recruiting. But typically that's the day where coach kind of lets us go home, eat dinner with the family on Thursdays. And then Friday is kind of obviously the intensity, the tempo is down, but that's the day where you kind of put all the game plan all together. That's what the scout team periods are catered to. And so morning meetings, install the last pieces of the game plan, practice, which involves all the game plan now, right? First and second down, third down, short yardage, goal line, whatever, all the situations that's going to show up in the game. And then Friday is typically, if it's a home game or away game, you're either traveling or you're letting the guys go and bringing them back that evening to meet. And then we all stay in the hotel wherever we're at, whatever the game is, and then sleep, wake up, and then whatever the game goes, we play Saturdays. If it's an away game, we come home right after the game.
Break it down on the plane, baby. Break
Yeah.
it down on the plane.
They break it down on the plane. You had the film graded, you had the meeting tape ready for Sunday. The Sunday, you still come in on Sunday. Again, this is the last few places I've been at. You meet with the guys on Sundays, you clear the tape, make corrections from the game, and then you go out and do a little run or practice, make some corrections, and then you clear it and then move on to the next game.
I don't miss it.
So,
I do miss it, but I don't miss it.
yeah. But I mean, in terms of just game planning, obviously, if you're efficient with your time and coaching staff, and I've been on some really good staffs where we've been able to steal time that way, in terms of game planning. Sometimes, I think we're in the office longer than we need to sometimes, because we just keep watching the same play over and over, trying to figure out an answer that really is probably not there. And so, or just maybe a play that they've done one time that drives me crazy, right? Like offense does one play and they might have even messed it up, but they obviously break some rules on defense. So now you're trying to find different ways to answer for that one play.
Just call Sally. Just call Sally when they're calling that play. You'll be fine. One of the things obviously I got to be a part of your room, and I love being a part of your room, and get to learn the front. But immediately, what popped out to me was just kind of your vision and kind of the identity that you set for the room. And one of the things that I still carry with me today that I'm going to take with me for the remainder of my career is just tell us about your principles. And I'm hoping you're still using them. Nothing talks you out of playing fast. Nothing talks you out
Yeah.
of making physical. Tell us about that. Give us all three.
Yeah.
And then pitch it to me like, I'm the recruit that's in your room right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, like that's something I picked up along the way. When I used to go watch, and he's down there at Oregon State now, Joe Salmalo was the one that used to always say, hey, anything that talks you out of playing fast is a bad idea. And so I kind of carried that. So obviously in this coaching world, man, as you go around, people and you pick stuff up, you kind of hopefully try to make it your own or you twist it. So we still talk about it here. I think it's still pretty important. And so obviously, the first principle is nothing talks you out of playing fast. Anything that does is a bad idea. And I think that goes for both player and coach in terms of just what you teach. One of the things that we got to do as a coaching staff, or we got to be able to get the players to do, is we have to first eliminate fear before they can play fast. Getting them to eliminate fear of mistake or fear of a wrong step or fear of not making a play or fear of just being whatever it may be, not knowing the playbook. So I think you can outwork that. When you can outwork that or your process goes, you can outwork it. Fear is hesitation. Any hesitation on the football field is a bad idea. And so that's what we mean by, that's when we talk about nothing talks you out of playing fast. Well, not knowing your playbooks can talk you out of playing fast. It's a bad idea. Not being in shape will talk you out of playing fast. That's a bad idea. And so we use it in that sense in terms of, hey, nothing talks you out of playing fast. If any action that you're doing, if it talks you out of playing fast, then it's a bad idea. You shouldn't do it. And so that's kind of how we use that. Second principle is talk about nothing talks you out of playing physical. Anything that does is a bad idea. And I really use that in the sense that being physical is not necessarily only a mindset, it's also a skill set that's got to be trained. So, and part of that development is your diet, right? If there's a defensive lineman, right, we got to have some physical attributes that's gonna allow you to be successful. If we want you to be at 285 or 290, well, we got to get you there, right? So if you're not eating breakfast in the morning, you just talked yourself out of being physical, or vice versa, the other way, right? If I'm too much weight and I'm not sticking to my meal plan, hey, you just talked yourself out of being physical because obviously we're trying to get you to be more explosive. I also look at it like in the weight room, right? If you're skipping a rep, you just talked yourself out of being physical. You ain't pushing yourself in the weight room, power cleaning, those things. That's going to allow you to be physical. You just talked yourself out of being physical that way. That's a bad idea. And then our last piece of that is obviously the fundamental work, right? Simply participating is not good enough. And so every drill is designed to build a skill. So if we're doing a drill that's going to allow you to be physical, let's do it to the best of your ability. If you're just up there participating in the drill, we're not paying attention, not knowing the why behind the drill and not doing it with the intensity and the tempo that's intended to do, you just talked yourself out of being physical. So that's kind of the second point. And then the last point is obviously everything we do with point 1 and point 2 is to get to point 3, which nothing talks you out of the ball or out of the job. The job is the ball. So, and I use that in the sense that more so mentally, right? Like if somebody don't block you and the ball's in front of you, right, or whatever it may be, or they miss the job, go tackle the ball. Even though it tells me in the playbook I got to rap, right? The ball is the job, so to go tackle the ball, right? And then the other sense of that is the fact that, hey, just keeping our poise, right? If you get beat on a play or you get double teamed, you get driven off the ball, right? Well, and you get frustrated and you get pissed about it. Well, if you get so frustrated to the sense that, hey, that you have doubt in your mind, well, you're no longer thinking about the ball, right? Or somebody cheap shots you, right? And you get to let your emotions get the best out of you, right? And all you're thinking about is getting even. Well, to me, you just talked yourself out of the job, which is the ball, right? So those are the principles that I think in terms of just something to talk to our guys about all the time. In kind of the room in terms of just nothing talks you out of playing fast. Anything that does is a bad idea. Nothing talks you out of making it physical. Anything that does is a bad idea. And then obviously the last piece is obviously nothing talks you out of the job. And the job is the ball. And so when we talk to our guys and we reference this thing is if I talk to somebody that's missing a meal, you just talk yourself out of playing physical, right? Because nowadays we get all those reports, who's made breakfast, who's made lunch, who made dinner now, those things. Or the weight room, like, hey, say this guy's not doing as much weight as they're pushing it. Or the injury piece, right? Like, hey, if you're not getting treatment, well, all those things in terms of just being the principles that's going to allow us to be the best player that we can be. And so still use it. And we still talk about it, and it's funny because I still got old players coming back and talking to me about it. But that's something that I picked up along the way, and kind of little added to it as we go, and shaped. I think coaching is always an adjustment. I think not one year is always the same. I think as you grow and as you learn, as you pick up new things, to be evolving as a football coach, as you grow in this profession.
I love it. I love it. Great answer. I always like when you talk about that. Got to sit on a lot of recruiting meetings and obviously a lot of meetings, and you do a great job just laying it out and simplifying it for them. Really good. Tell me what, two-part here. What do your meetings look like for install? And then what the meeting and structure looks like post-practice.
Yeah. So I think it's important. I think number one is just realizing that for us as a defensive lineman, the install is just where we align, right? But the game is the drill work. And so when we talk about install here, I think it's more important to us when we first talk about is we got to install techniques. I think that's the playbook to us is techniques, right? Or whatever that technique is, whether it's a base 3, base 2I, whatever that entails, right? Because when you put a playbook or a play up there is you tag it with a technique for these guys, right? So first things first is whenever we get into football is I don't install plays yet. The first thing I do is I install techniques. If it's a movement technique, whether it's a 1-gap exchange or it's a 2-gap exchange or whatever it may be, we install techniques way before we start installing playbooks. And then the playbook just tells you where you align. And then once the playbook tells you where you align, now it's obviously whatever technique that it goes. And so we talk a lot about just our keys to success when it talks to D-line play. I think number one is you have to know and understand the defensive call, know where you align, right? Know my assignment, and then obviously know my technique. So that kind of falls into that place. I think number two is that you got to understand the situation, and then obviously formation. I think the situation is one pass, depending on what that is. And in the formation, it tells you kind of pre-snap clues that you got to make sure that you know, right? Like one of the hardest things to do as a defensive lineman is defend everything, right? Reach, base, double team, right? Well, there's some things formationally that can tell you whether I can, what I need to defend, block menu I need to defend. Number 3 is align perfectly on to execute the job. Align to execute against something I picked up along the way. If I'm playing a wide zone team and the back is in pistol and it's a formation tells me it's a wide zone formation, then I'm gonna align perfectly to be able to play the reach for us. And so whether that's lining a little bit of width, or if I'm moving, minusing or plussing my alignment to where I know I can't get reach or can't let this block happen to me. And then number 4 is obviously lock in on your keys, which is where you place your eyes. And so if I'm expecting to reach here, all I need to do is get my eyes to where it needs to be to tell me that it's going to be a reach. Because all I'm looking for is when the ball snaps, I know what he's going to do. I just need to confirm it with my eyes. And then number 5 is just execute. All right. So 1 through 4 is pre-snap mentality or process. Number 5 is just the ball snapped, and then you're just going to do what you're coached to do. All right. In terms of just taking off on the football, your hand placement, your block reaction, how to be the reach. Number 5 is on me. That's my job. That's where the drill work comes into place. You're going to do what your coach will do. You're going to do what you're trained to do. If the ball is snapped and you get off on the football and those actions don't match what I'm expecting, then obviously I got to do a better job coaching that thing. And be able to get those things done. And then number 6 is just obviously how important it is just to finish it. So that's kind of the meaning, how important is the job to me, right? Effort and attitude in which I want to get that done. And I ask the guys all the time, number 5 is on me. That's my job. Number 6 is on you. That's just a decision you got to make. What's in your heart to be able to get this job done. So when they talk about install, before we even get into playbook plays, I think it's important for them to understand that the techniques that are taught within the defense. So if it's a 4-man down defense here, well, the first install I'm going to put in is obviously what a base 3 looks like and what those reactions are. What a base 2I, what those reactions are, and then we put in, hey, whatever Sally, all right, or whatever 4 down front that we had, back in the day or during our time together, and then now just placing them in those reactions, and so. So that's the install there in terms of where they're aligned. So any install after that in terms of playbook is you're putting it up and then you're installing the techniques that's within the playbook. And so I would think if we can get that process done early on, it's like football play. I talk to our guys about the first 2 seconds of a play. First 2 seconds is for us as a defensive lineman. If I can win the first 2 seconds of the play, my likelihood to win the snap is going to be really, really high. That means obviously taking off on the football, our opportunity to greet a block. And so if I can win the first 2 seconds of a snap here, which is we're going to invest a lot of time into that, then our likelihood to win the snap is going to be really high. I don't see that any different when you're installing, right? So when you talk about the first 2 seconds of installing a play, well, those first 2 seconds talk about how well can you get these guys to learn their techniques and understand the why behind the techniques, because every play after that is just their techniques in action, just wherever you place them on a playbook. And then when you talk about, obviously we go out and execute the defense to the best of our ability. You got to make some corrections because obviously they're good on the other side of the ball as well, right? And not everything's going to go right. And so practice goes like it goes. Post-practice, those I like techniques here, I always try to compartmentalize it. Like one of the things that we, especially in college, even probably more so in high school, is that these guys don't have enough time to study football, nor are they mature enough to just do it just yet. There's some guys that learn over time. So it's our job as football coaches to be able to fill in the blanks for them as much as we can, right? And try to simplify things as much as we can for them to understand. Because as they get done with an hour and a half or 2-hour practice, they come in, shower, eat, and then they got to go sit in a chemistry class. Or they got to go sit in a business class. They got to go sit in a math class in which the expectation is still the same. We want these guys to do well in those things, right? So their mind is not necessarily on football all day around. And then after class, they got girlfriends. Some have girlfriends. Some guys have things going on at home that they can't control. Meaning that, hey, when they come back in the afternoon, man, they just went through a whole day, and you don't know what each one of them just went through that day, right? In terms of some exams, some didn't. But at the same time, we still got a job to do as a football coach. And in the afternoon here, I try to compartmentalize it a little bit in terms of what we got: run techniques, pass fits, and then obviously whatever other specialized techniques, exotic techniques that we can coach on. And so that's what happens in the correction meetings afternoon is usually I try to compartmentalize all the calls. And if it's the same, if it's the same techniques that shows up that we didn't do really well, because that's part of the meeting, right? It's not necessarily showing what we don't do well. What we do well is we got to show things and correct things that's going to get us beat. And so that's a lot of what the meeting does in the afternoon is obviously showing some things that's going to get us beat. And so I try not, we don't watch every snap. I try not to watch every single snap. But what I do watch is the major issues in the meeting. And so if it's something with our hands, something with our footwork, or if it's a certain technique where, hey, maybe we're edge rusher and we lose contain, whatever, 3-4 times, well, that's an issue, all right? Or lose it 2 times, that's an issue. So we'll watch it and we'll talk about it. And then not necessarily after that. And you've been with me like, hey, this is the drill we're going to do the next day to be able to answer those things. And so that's what the meeting entails. A lot of it in the correction meetings in the afternoon is acknowledging what we did well. And then usually try to throw in some clips that they can celebrate. They still got to be able to now overview a practice of what we did well. Obviously, there's some practice issues. Each slide tells us, like each practice is always a recap of what we did well, what we didn't do well. And then I'll try to throw a clip in what we did well, because we still got to keep doing those and why we did it well. But then the issue part is where, hey, we got to get fixed. And that's what usually the afternoon practice entails, or the afternoon meeting.
Real quickly, can you kind of talk about, because one of the things I admired about you was like you were adamant about the feedback needed to be correct. Because I remember one time we graded a game, and I probably missed some plus minuses on there, and it wasn't adding up. And you made a remark to me like this is a big deal for the guys as far as like their scores, how they view themselves. So can you kind of talk about the feedback that you would provide in the grading system that you would provide during camp, and then as well post game?
Most of these guys, they want to get coached and they want to know whether they did right or wrong. I think. And so during camp, and I do it now in spring ball, is that every play is a plus or minus. And that really plus or minus is whether they got the job done or not. One of the things I try to explain to them, or we talk about in the grading system, is the grading system is not to earn a job right now. The grading system is to be able to declare what you do well and what you don't do well. We ain't playing a game right now, right? Especially in fall camp, right? It's fall camp. We're not playing a game right now. We're prepping to play a game. So I do believe in the fact that every rep they take, I think the feedback that they get on that, if whether we talk about it in the meeting room or whatnot, is whether they did enough to win the snap or they didn't do enough to win the snap. And obviously early on there's a lot more minuses than there is pluses, but it's not the minus that, hey, The grading system and what I tell them is not necessarily your worth. It's just acknowledging the fact that, hey, you didn't do the play right that way. Now we got to get it fixed. It's also the fact that, hey, when you grade every single play, you'll start to see when you pull all their minuses, which is what players do a lot of times, they pull all their minuses about. And then they want to ask why the minuses there is if they don't understand it. I think there's a conversation that needs to happen. I think it's important for each of our players to understand the why behind the technique or why they're on the defense, right? Because they may think at that time here's the play. They did well. They did what they're supposed to do, but then obviously it's a minus because, hey, well, they didn't understand. What I think for us, I can't have these guys leaving a room and you're correcting them and they go in the locker room and they don't know whether they did it right or wrong. Well, they can watch the film and see, hey, it's a minus. So one of two things happens. Number one is that they either look at it like, yeah, I could have got that right, or what I need to do right. Or number two is I don't agree with that minus. Well, let's talk about it, right? Let's come over here and let's ask about it. Let's ask the question. Whenever there's a minus, there's got to be a comment next to it, right? And they may not understand the comment or whatever it is, or may not agree with it, but hopefully there's a conversation that talks to be able to get them to go closer to what we're looking for, what we need them to get done. So that's kind of the grading system. And again, what I talk, same conversation I have these guys is depth chart's not getting set by these plus and minuses. The depth chart gets set when we get closer to the season. The plus minuses that we give now in spring ball is the fact that, hey, after every snap you take, is it a winning snap or is it a losing snap? And this is why it's a winning snap. This is why it's a losing snap. And so at the end of spring, or even at the end of fall camp, if I start to see a tendency where, hey, because I still look at those, where I pull up, player A's, all his minuses. Well, if I see the same thing showing up over and over and over again, well, hey, that's something where it's going to need to pay some little bit individual attention to, because his issue may not be somebody else's issues, but everybody's issues is our issues. Right? So we got to get everybody to get better and continue to grow as a football player. That's number one. And then number two is I think it's important, like I said, for the player standpoint on that side is, it's the feedback. There's too many plays and there's not enough time in the day to talk about everybody's players. And may not get to that snap, but obviously I think each player wants to know whether they did right or wrong. And if they did right, awesome. They want to keep doing it. And if they did wrong, I would hope that they want to be able to find a way to get it right or find an answer to get it right, or they agree with it. Like, yeah, it's not a good practice for me that way.
From a scouting perspective, from a game plan perspective, what is the most pertinent information, cut-ups, handouts that you're giving to your players in your room to be successful?
Yeah. Well, I think I said before, especially season, right? It's so these guys answers to the test a lot of times, right? To what they look for. So the cut-ups I have for them was a write-up with each cut-up, right? So at the training matchup, we match it up to where the game plan is put in, right? So tips that we want when we're on, and the offense is always talking to us, are we listening in terms of what the information is, right? What the back set is, what the tight end alignment is, like all those little things that can help us anticipate a play, run pass, or a run scheme, or even a pass game. Where you get what I used to always talk about by the end of the day is I want to find out what the DNA runs are. Right? So I put the run, and for us in the box, the DNA runs is whatever it is tight zone. It could be dual. Some people run power without the pull. Whatever those DNA runs is, I make a cut up for them, right? Because I don't know if not all of them have time to watch it. So we make a cut up of what their DNA runs are, and then we label it. And then we try to find, obviously, like fronts, right? So they can kind of see and how they play the blocks that they can anticipate when that happens, when they show up. Make a cut up a play action pass, right? Whether it's inline or perimeter pass. So you make that cut up. And then obviously it's not a cut up of every single snap of them. It's a cut up on terms of, for me, what's important is trying to get them to see what you see. So if you know that, hey, their play action pass and they're showing this distances, this is what we're going to, this is the cut up that we want you to know. This is the information we want you to know out of this cut up and some of those things. So you try to do it situationally for the guys. I think probably the one cut up that's always a hit with the players is the personnel cut-ups, right? Like the old linemen that they're going to face, right? Their pass sets, their losses. And so those cut-ups, when you have those old line, those are usually, we try to get them done on Sundays because obviously Sundays after practice, Sundays their day off. So usually those personnel cut-ups are done for them so they can take notes. We usually have a questionnaire for them on an old lineman. And part of that is I like for them, and I've gotten into it more so in the last couple of years than I did previously, is the fact that I want their their pass rush plans built before the season, before the week starts. Because by the time we get to third down on Wednesdays or whatever it may be, is it's too late for you to figure it out to come up with a rush plan. And so those personnel cutups, offensive tackles, obviously will break up their sets, whether it's, especially versus pass, and what kind, how do they block a Y3? How do they block a tight 2 or whatever it is? How do they block a shade? So those cutups are all made for them. And then off of that is they build their rush plans off of it, right? What kind of track am I going to take? What kind of hand fighting am I going to take? And so they study that. And then hopefully, again, as they turn in those sheets early in the week about what their rush plan is, my job is to reinforce them, because as I look at those rush plans, hey, these are the pass rush drills we want to be able to focus on this week, because most of these rush plans, and most often than not, most of them got the same ones, especially interior-wise. The edges got a little bit more flexibility because they got a little different skill sets there in the edges. But we try to incorporate what their rush plan is. And if I agree with them, right, like I got to watch. And some of them might just be writing stuff because it sounds cool and they think they can get it. But a lot of the times, these guys, old linemen, when they look at their losses, they want to do the same moves, right? Like they say, they lost because of this. They struggle, especially if the same move shows up more often than not. Well, that's what we try to work on during the course of the week in terms of what their rush plan is. I also think that's kind of put some ownership on their side in terms of if they're making up their rush plans, like they got some vested interest in watching this tape. And then we go one-on-ones during practice. Is like, hey, we're not trying to beat the guy across from us. We're trying to work on our rush plan, right? Because we're not lining up against our O-lineman that's playing against us. So we try to work together that way with the O-line to be able to help execute the game plan for the week.
Yeah. That's one thing I love my time with you, kind of doing the profile sheets and the offensive linemen. And it was twofold. Like, it was good for our guys to go in there and watch film and to write notes, but at the same time, it was good feedback for us as coaches to see, okay, how much are these guys, being intentional with watching film for, what they're putting down for their rush plan, what they're putting down for identifying, weaknesses on certain old linemen. And at the same time, I love that you gave them the platform when you would just call on one or two of them and, have them share their thoughts about, the tackle they're facing, or, the center or the guard that they were facing for that week. I thought that was really beneficial. A little bit
All
more.
these guys want to get sacks, right? All these guys want to get sacks, right? So
Stop the run first, baby. We got to stop the run first.
And so when you give them like, hey, to give them an idea to like, hey, how are you going to win the pass rush this week? They go pretty good at it, in terms of just studying that film.
Yeah. I didn't realize how much indies were involved with D-line until I got with you. But I love how you go about structuring practice. So can you kind of just give a quick overview of how you structure your indie plan for a certain day?
I am a believer in EDDs, everyday drills, so we'll always get into that. And part of those EDDs, like those fundamentals of us getting in a great stance, our ability to race off the football, and then our ability to deliver a blow. Like, I think it's with every practice that's got to get addressed, right? And sometimes as the week goes on, you don't have as much indie time because it's hard. You don't want to beat these guys up. These guys are big, explosive athletes, and we don't want to obviously beat them up before the game starts. So I'm a big believer in EDDs, or whatever those EDDs. We reinforce the fundamentals that we talk about in the meeting room. And then we get into kind of our run emphasis, which is a lot of it is on Tuesday, right? Because it's first down. So run emphasis is, so a lot of our indies catered towards the run block menu that we're going to face that week. So whether it's line keys or a technique that we got to tweak a little bit to be able to help us with the run game, line keys to be able to get the block menu so these guys can react the way we need them to react for us to be successful. It's also kind of run play action period for us here, where when we get into pass rush, it's not necessarily sold out play action. It's our ability to convert a play action. So a lot of our conversions, run to pass, comes on early part of the week, because as we break down the run game, we also kind of try to break down the pass game, or the run play action game that they bring. And so what that's going to look like for the edges and the inside guys, and then what's our best escape plan to be able to be effective on the run play action game. So that's kind of what that's geared like. I still always, towards the end period, work on straight pass rush. I think that's always got to be an element of your game. Typically on Tuesdays, the emphasis is on the feet. I'm a big believer that pass rush starts with your feet. That's something I picked up along the way with a lot of coaches. So there's either some sort of pass rush agility that we do to train their feet, hoops, or whatever it may be. And then obviously as you get to later in the week, we get into third down days. Now we'll start to work the play action plan or the pass rush plan that the guys do with their hand movements. And so, the same thing happens. Early part is on Tuesdays, typically the game plan. That's when the pressure, blitz, movement starts to come into play in terms of our run. So individual period is catered towards those type of movements, either run movements and then pass movements. Because when you put in third downs, obviously there's some exotic defenses that we got to be able to go games. And so those stunts, and you got to be able to, I think, schedule them to where you got enough time to work on them, all those techniques that we got throughout the course of practice. So I think structuring practice is really, really, really important. And the time and the efficiency in what you do the drills is really important to be able to get that done. So love Indy. I think that's the life we live in as a defensive lineman. Is being able to master our fundamentals. So the game is just an extension of individual period when we line up and go. So, hopefully when we get to those team reps, these guys are just reacting the way you train them to react.
Yeah. Is there a drill or a team period that you love that you wish you did, earlier on?
Yeah, I want to get into, for me, is the competition portion of practice. Not necessarily like one of the things that I've learned even here. I mean, even more so here at UCLA with Coach Chesney and kind of what he brought over is this. He has built-in competition drills, not as a team, not team competition. We've always done those things where we line up, put the ball on the ground, and it's team. But there's a lot of individual one-on-one matches that O-line, D-line, whatever they be, whether it's pass rush, even in the linebacker room, and it's a spotlight where the whole team watches it. And I've really enjoyed that portion of this practice here. And I think there's got to be an element of that. And then the way Coach Chesney talks about it here and Coach Hitch talks about, I mean, it's basically when you're in that one-on-one situation, all 11's on the field, but the spotlight's on you. So, and the ball's coming your way and you have to make the play. And so, how are you going to respond or how are you going to perform in that time? And then not only that, the competition portion of it, we keep score. When you lose your competition drill, offense, defense get the point or whatever, whoever wins. And the pressure cooker, meaning, hey, if you're the rep that matters, the winner gets his face on the wall and you don't. And so as you walk by that thing, you got to look at somebody that you lost to every single time. So I think, obviously the fundamental work of football, the technique works of football. And obviously football is hard as it is, but that's just create another element of how important obviously your job is, or when it's time to perform, you have to step up.
Yeah. Oh, I like that, Coach. Talking a little bit recruiting NIL here.
Yeah.
If you're gonna build your, prototypical D lineman that you're gonna recruit, what does that look like?
Well, I think if you're looking at interior defensive linemen, typically you like those guys you like to be about 6'3" plus. And I say plus interior, I like to be about 6'3" plus. Somebody that's probably between 285 and to 310 or 320, depending on how well he carries it, right? Those physical attributes. So when we talk about recruiting defensively, I think there's 4 different categories I think we try to address. I think the first one is obviously the characteristic trait, right? Like what kind of character he is, in terms of collecting, talking to coaches, who he is as a person, his football, does he treat people right? Is he on time? Those things. Then I think you talk about the physical traits, right? The physical traits is how big and how heavy he is, right? Like, hey, you talk about somebody like I said, like you're looking for guys interior like to be 6'3" plus. Like that guy to be about at least 285, obviously if he's plus, depending on how well he carries the weight, right? If he can be 330 and run really, really fast for a long period of time or be explosive for a long period of time, means be 335 or whatever it is, right? I like that guy, in terms of just physical traits, the arm length. You guys, hopefully he's got anything like 32 plus or whatever it may be. You look at the combine results and kind of see who's successful, but give you some length to be able to have some success there. And then you talk about the athletic traits, right? So athletic traits is how fast does he move? Can he change direction? Can he bend? Those things, right? So you're watching tape, you're watching combine, you're talking to, those are things you got to be able to see and watch on tape and be able to declare how fast does he change direction? How fast can he, process information to go? And then And then the last piece is obviously, I think, is this the toughness trait, right? Like all that, if he got all that perfect, and if he's not tough, he's not going to do well in this game. And that toughness, obviously, in terms of just his ability to handle hard, his ability to take hard coaching, his ability to come back from, to be able to handle failure when it does happen. And then how important football is to that, because we all know to be good at anything, there's got to be a element of toughness that goes there. So if I'm building my own player, right, we're talking about somebody that's got some characteristics in terms of just being a good human, being a good person. If we're going to spend this time together, he'd like to be around that guy a bunch, right? You don't have to worry about that. And the more the characteristic traits come about, the more that you worry about football in terms of just coaching, his techniques, the physical traits we talked about, right? If he's got the physical traits now, hey, in the weight room, how strong he is, right? He's got the size to be able to execute things that you're coaching. Because obviously, hey, as a football coach, it's your job to make sure that he does what he's supposed to do or instill some fundamentals that's going to allow him to be successful. Now, in the D-line room, they all come in different shapes and sizes, but the job is the same, right? I just know that a guy that's about 6'3" plus and a guy that's about 300 pounds or 310 pounds, depending, it's really explosive. The answer is him in terms of just coaching him with his traits, to be able to do the job. And then you talk about the athletic traits, right? He's got to be able to bend. He's got to have, in terms of how fast can he fluidly change his direction? Does he drop his hips naturally? Does he have that natural bend when he's turning a corner? Those angles that when you watch him on tape. So that's got to show up, right? His ability to be explosive. When he greets somebody at the line of scrimmage, who's moving, him or the other guy? And then the last piece, somebody that's tough, right? When we talk about how this is a tough sport, can he handle hard coaching? Can he handle hard the schedule, waking up every single day in the morning? Is football important enough for him to continue to do this over a long period of time? The lights only come up about 12 times a year, right? And so the rest of the weeks of the year, is he still willing to be able to put in the same effort that he would when it's a game day, right? Those type of efforts. So if I'm building a good football player, hopefully all those 4 attributes or those 4 traits are checked off.
Yeah. Good answer, Coach. Prior to, I texted a bunch of the coaches that I've had on, a lot of the high school guys, and I mentioned that I was wanted to start branching off and getting on with, Division I football coaches and maybe some of the other connections that I had on the professional level. And I asked them, like a list of questions. And kind of a common theme was like, and it wasn't directly said, but they almost felt like as if the high school head coaches kind of getting phased out a little bit of the recruiting process with NIL. So one of the questions I got from a coach was, do you listen to high school head coach recommendations, or at the same time, or do you think that, that the high school head coaches have a hard time, not biased because of their guys and not give you like an objective evaluation on a certain player?
Yeah, I think that's a heck of a question, because the landscape of recruiting has changed. I'll say this: recruiting and football, really, business of football is still a people business. And so what I mean by that is, do I listen to high school coaches? Absolutely still do. Relationship business, right? So I've been fortunate of recruiting in certain areas for a long period of time where I have deep connections to coaches. Still, I think the head coaches, are still a big portion of somebody's recruiting process. But I also think that as time goes, like I'm an old timer, but now I think, and I'm still fairly young in this profession here, but I've recruited long enough to know to grow deep relationships with people where we have decisions that we made over time where both of us were involved, where, hey, I trust this guy or I don't trust this guy, or I take his word for a minute for connection. The NIL age, I don't know necessarily has anything to do with more so the relationship of who we get recommendations from. It's more so who the players listen to. And so a lot of the times now is recruiting everybody. It's always been the same. Recruiting everybody around the prospect, right? Trying to find out as much information as possible. Well, in this day and age now, I think there's a lot of players or high school players now who maybe specialize in certain sports, so they spend more time with their trainer outside of the building than they do with their coaches inside the building. And that's where I think, and again, this is just my opinion, I think where it's moved a little bit, where when I was, I'll take, for instance, I was in high school, and this is over 30 years ago. I played football, played basketball, ran track or whatever. I didn't run track. I threw. But where the high school coach was also my high school football coach. He was also an assistant on the track coach, field, who else, other coaches. So those guys were the guys we were around with the most, right? And so I think this day and age in college football, I mean, in recruiting high school prospects, is not necessarily that the coach's opinions or their recommendations are devalued. Is the fact that I think that we tend as college football coaches create relationships with those that somehow have an influence on or have a relationship with the prospect, whoever those may be. And sometimes now here with this day and age, it may not be the high school coach. He plays for him, and we still got to be able to ask questions because he's got to be able to. I think he's still very, very, very vital in the process in terms of what his recommendation is. But us as coaches, we're just in the business of gathering information when it comes to recruiting. So we want to get as much information as possible about a prospect. So we still talk to coaches, whether we take the recommendation or not. That's us as a program to be able to decide when we sit in the meeting room and we put all the information there, whether it's a trainer on the sideline, whether it's a 7-on-7 coach, whether it's a sprint coach, it might be somebody else off the building or another person in the building that surrounds the prospect. And so we try to do a great job of, and we get it right sometimes and we don't get it right sometimes in terms of just collecting as much information about a prospect as possible. And so I do think that the times, it's not necessarily the process has changed. I just think the time has changed in the fact that, like I said, number one, with this day and age, I mean, how many kids are staying at the same high school for that long-term period of time? And I'm not saying any more than that, but that happens quite a bit now. How many of these coaches, right? How many of these coaches are switching around now? New head coaches here and those things. I think that, coaches' information and recommendation is still important. But I will say there's certain coaches out there that I still, when he calls me about a player that he says, hey, this guy can play, then I'm going to take that seriously. Now, it's not, I don't know if anybody would ever take anybody's word for what it is, for what it is, meaning, hey, and I don't know if any college coach, if a coach calls me and say, hey, this guy's a Division I football player, that we'll take it. We still got to do a good job of vetting that. And then so much so is not necessarily, even if I do believe that coach because of our history together, there's still a process that has to be going through in terms of vetting a prospect. Nowadays, it's not always on the coaches. We got a whole recruiting department that be able to evaluate that film now. We got obviously coordinators. So there's a in terms of there's a process in terms of evaluating prospects now to where I think times have changed. And again, I go back to a few years ago, where it was just 9 full-time head coaches, 2 GAs. So that decision was talked about in terms of just areas. When a coach called me and he was in my area and I recruited that area for a long time, absolutely. Like, hey, I'm going to watch him. And if he's anything close, he'd look at obviously what the information was given on the player. It didn't go through as many checks and balances as it does now.
Yeah.
And certainly the day and age now where the money is involved is that you have to have checks and balances to be able to, you got to have a system in your program to make sure that this is money well spent, because we can't take those decisions lightly anymore.
Yeah.
In terms of in the recruiting game. So I think, again, I don't know if it's changed anyway. I just think the process is changed and who's touched these athletes. So we got to adjust with the times as it goes through. So the relationship still matters with coaches. There's still coaches that are coaching that have deep relationships with, that I recruited for a long time. That if he told me there's a guy that, then it's different. Now it's not a decision. It's not just me, saying, hey, let's go get after this kid. It's now, hey, put him in the process. Our recruiting department's got to be able to watch these guys. What do they rank them? And then move forward. Before it was just us and the coordinator. A lot of the times you watched it, you liked them. The coordinator, if he liked you, then he liked him.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, right? And so I think, everybody's got a little different process, but I do think the times and kind of just the landscape of high school football, it is different. The pieces that are closest to the athlete, that where we got to get information from, are used, nowadays outside the building. And it's just the reality of the matter, I think.
Yeah, no, I like what you said there, and it, brought me back to an old colleague and boss, and exactly what you're saying, where you're trying to gather as much information as possible, and you're really just, when it comes to these decisions, these big decisions, now money decisions, like you're really trying to mitigate risk. And one of the things that he said back then, I still think it holds true to this day, is like, you're not really trying to maximize like the hits on the recruit. Like, I guess, like the overall ceiling, like, hey, you got these impact players. I think that is obviously important. But when he was approaching the process, his philosophy was, you're trying to minimize your misses, and you're really trying to build that floor. And you
Floor.
want to
Yep.
be consistent on the guys that you bring in, and you want to minimize your risk as opposed to, okay, I'm trying to maximize, hits. So I really thought, his outlook on that was awesome. And it's something that, I've carried with me and something that I find true to this day. How has the recruiting, and you kind of talked about a little bit, how has the recruiting and evaluation process changed with NIL? And this is me, a couple years out from now and not being too
Yeah.
much involved with recruiting, except for with the D-line and the Hawaii boys when I was with you, is are players just getting written off at some point just because there's a price tag on that kid and you guys know that you guys aren't going to spend X amount on X kid? Like what does that look like? If you don't mind opening up the hood and talking about
Yeah.
that just a little bit.
I think, obviously, even since we were together, and it wasn't that long ago, the landscape's been changed since then. It's a different job now than it was 3 years ago in that aspect. And so obviously when we get players in, that financial piece is a pretty big piece. So you got to have a department to be able to handle that. For us, one of the things that I always try to keep in mind as a football coach is that the financial piece and who that and what it is to that kid is still got to be separate of who that person is. Because one of the things that I found even in the last couple of years is that um, once that player sits in the room, like nothing changes. He's still a freshman or incoming guy that you still got to develop, right? And oftentimes, right, and I think it's good 'cause, like more often than not, man, I'm not involved in those financial decisions and who does what, who makes what, because in my room, they all, when they come in or in our room or when we come in, I got to be able to find the best guys that's going to help us win football games. In the same turn, continue to develop those that are not ready yet to help us win football games. And then one of the things I do know is that, yeah, the landscape has done changed, but once those players come in my room, they're still the same. They're still eager. They're still hungry to learn. They still want to work hard and they still want to be able to play football at a high level. And so that's a little bit separate in terms of, hey, when they come to my room, they got to be able to perform. Now, whether the financial piece is a little bit different in terms of regardless of, when we have guys in the room that makes X amount of dollars, a lot more than the other guy here. And one is it doesn't necessarily grant them access to the football field any faster. All right. It's just the fact that what we're paying for is the skill set that's going to help us win a championship someday. All right. And I think we got to keep that in mind with these young men as we get them in. As we get them in, is that, hey, so yeah, it's a little bit different in terms of, the L or the money piece or the financial piece is that um, you're or the potential of this guy helping you would possibly be happen. And so with that being said, nothing changes for the student athlete or so that it does for us as coaches and the evaluation process. When I think, like you talked about, like, hey, you try to minimize misses. I think us now is just making sure now, hey, the value in evaluating somebody's skill set, it is what it is. Try to get it as close as possible. It's getting it to where the draft, right? Like, hey, you got to gather as much information as you can about somebody. So it's even more of an in-depth look. You got to get them on campus even more so, as many times as you can. Because you got to, number one, obviously, like those four, I think those characteristics that you look for, those traits you look for, right? The character, the physical ability, the athletic ability, and then obviously the toughness, I think. Like all those things you got to be able to check all four of those boxes. And then hopefully, like I said, the intention is that you believe in this kid that much the job is to help fulfill that potential, who that kid is. So does it change the athlete soon enough? I don't know. It's hard to say because for us as football coaches, like, I don't know. It's easy to say, hey, he saw the money or he's making money and then that's all it is, right? But it's also the same turn is like, hey, did we expect him to be ready when he came in because of how much he was getting paid?
Yeah.
I think, do we coach him any less? All right, because, hey, the expectation is if he comes in with that much higher profile, if we end up signing a 5-star kid, is it all of a sudden, hey, he's ready to go because, hey, he's the top recruit in the country or whatever it is. He's the highest paid, which again, like I said, we don't talk numbers here, obviously in our building. That's not, for us, my job is to develop the talent that's in the room, and then hopefully I want all good players, obviously good skill sets to be in the room. And so that being said is that hopefully we're doing our part, right, in terms of being a football coach, that, hey, we're diligent with our process to help develop each player in that room, no matter how much he makes.
Yeah. This just kind of struck me when you were talking overall philosophy, maybe how you see it, maybe how you think Big Ten Conference sees it, how you think UCLA sees it. Are you guys thinking plug and play, or are you guys still thinking projection, development, or a hybrid of the both? Because I'm thinking Oregon State, you got Takari Hickle, right?
Mhm.
Big projection, big project, running back, small school out of Washington, and going to be a hell of a player for them. Like, does a guy like that get a chance in this day and age at UCLA, at, any other school within the P4 conference?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things that, I think you got to realize is that it's not a uh, infinite amount of money to pay players, right? And so when you're talking about, and I don't know what it is, obviously in terms of what the financial is, we got a roster of 120 guys. We got 85 guys on scholarship. Not everybody's making the same, or nor is that not everybody's making anything, right? In terms of that that uh, that money or revenue share or whatever it may be. I would argue that probably more are not than they are, if that makes any sense to you in terms of that. So, but general philosophy for me, man, I'm a big believer in deep relationships. I think those happen over time. And so, if you're asking me, my job is to be able to help somebody reach a stage of their athletic life that they otherwise couldn't reach on their own. And then I think part of that is a deep relationship that you can continue, that you can grow roots in. Part of my joy is the relationships I've been able to make or develop with players. And I think that happens over time. So with that being said, is that, yeah, my general philosophy is like I like to grow the program from ground up. In this day and age, it's tough to do that nowadays because obviously, hey, when you involve NIL deals or revenue share or money or the transfer portal in this picture here, how many of those players are willing to stick around until that time comes for them? And so it doesn't change necessarily my process in terms of that. I like to be able to get high school guys. I like to be able to grow high school guys. Not everybody that we're going to recruit are going to make a lot of money. And to your question about a guy like that, yeah, we're looking at everybody that can help us win football game. And I think there's got to be some sort of balance in the room in terms of not everybody's the same, and not everybody gets paid the same. And our GM and our they got a budget to work off of. If that budget allows me to recruit a 5-star kid, great, let's go get him. If that budget allows me to recruit a guy that's a P4 guy that maybe sometimes get overlooked or whatever it may be, then we're gonna go get that guy as well. So we always keep track of everybody that goes, that comes in. Um, this day and age, our job is to win football games. So we don't lose sight. Like that's still the ultimate job. Job and why I do it are two different things. I'm fortunate that I've been part of programs that the job and why I do it are closer together. Because ultimately, like, hey, if you don't win football games, we don't have a job that allows me to coach the way I need to, do what I like to do and why I want to do it shows up. So, yeah, I think there's room for everybody that way. I think it's all in the evaluator, meaning I like that. Right now, I can tell you we're recruiting somebody that's very inexperienced, really new to the game, that otherwise, that haven't played a lot of football, but potentially we believe this guy's is going to be a really good player for us. And so I think it's still a people game in terms of recruiting.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point there. You talk about balance within the room. And, I asked you the question, like, what's your prototypical D lineman look like? But that was the one thing that I loved about, at our time at Oregon State. And we had the edges in there too. It was just like different personalities, different body types, different skill sets. So when you talk about building a room, what's your overall general approach with that?
I think number one, the ones that's got to show up, is like football still got to be important to everybody in the room, right? Like, so when you're building a room, is like you still got to remember what's truly important and why they're there, right? Because for us, I think, like I said before, we have a job, and the job is the job. There's no way around it. We got to win football games, and then obviously there's individual whys, right? Why we do it, right? Obviously, you heard why I do this thing is, the opportunity to serve young men. In terms of recruiting the room is, we got to recruit traits or skill sets, that's going to allow them to be good. And those look a lot different. Like, so when you talk about in that sense is, right, we talk about guys that are really explosive. We talk about guys that can change direction. We talk about guys that can physically, that you can project, that physically they'll be able to get the job done for us. Because again, not every D lineman looks the same. We're going to recruit one that comes out of high school that's 330 pounds. And then we're going to recruit a D lineman that's going to come in and it's going to be 250 pounds, right, at the same time. But the job is the same. And I think one of the things that's still got to be at the core of that is that football is really, really important, that they love the game. They love to compete. And then around that is obviously their individual personalities. And when you talk about individual personalities, when you're recruiting people from all different parts of the country here, it's going to come with a lot of different personalities, right? And so I think, and then creating an environment where it's a safe place for them to be who they are, right? And so I think that's one of the hidden gems about playing college football is a locker room and where everybody comes from. It's a meeting room, right? Like you come in here, you got a guy from Florida versus a guy from, obviously, we had a guy from the islands, right? Like those relationship and how that gets, shared experiences. I think that grows people, when they're exposed to that type of diversity. But I think it's second to their ability to love the game, their ability to obviously add value to a football program. And then whatever personality comes with them, hopefully you created a space for them to where they can be themselves and obviously grow together as a unit.
Yeah, I like that. Any acronyms, quotes, or values that, is kind of fundamental to you and your philosophy in your room?
We
talked about the three principles. Love the three principles.
I don't know if there's any quote or any, acronym I've lived with in the past, in terms of just consistently using the room. One thing that I do live by is that the fact that I think you have to be able to create a room where players can be themselves. I think that's got to be a safe environment. I think creating a safe environment to where they can be themselves, they can get coached hard. I think over the years, you got to work at that opportunity to where players gain trust in you as a football coach to where you can coach them hard. I don't know necessarily you can coach anybody hard when they don't trust you that way. And so creating things or creating an environment where they can continue for you as a football coach and for each other, be able to create some consistent trust within each other and connection with each other. I think you got a recipe to have a pretty good room, at least to start.
Any final advice on coaching, teaching, leadership?
I love what I do. I'm fortunate that I've been blessed with the opportunity to be around the people that I've been around. And usually for me, one of the things that I've gotten into is that I've been surrounded by a lot of great coaches on the coaching staff and the people that are around. Times, when you talk like your podcast and what you're doing, this is awesome. But for me, where I've grown the most is that the staffs I've been on, you often go see guys talk at other clinics and take advice from them when I can walk down the road from me, walk the 2 offices down and talk ball with the guys on the staff, learning from them, I think I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of great coaches that I probably learned more from them than any other clinic that I've been to or talked to. And so I think probably the advice I would, as young coaches, being on good staffs, man, is that it could be a clinic every day of the week if you want it to when you go in and sit there and talk to coaches who you're surrounded by. And so, I don't think you necessarily need to
I absolutely agree with that. That's why I loved my role as a graduate assistant at both institutions that I was at. There was just so much access. And I think that's what sometimes coaches who want to get into the college game and where they have to sacrifice maybe whatever their income is right now or what they got going on for now. But I think you want to get your foot in the door. You want to get access. You want to be around the coaches. You want to create value. But I think exactly what you just said was, I think my third year GAing, it finally clicked with me. It was like, okay, I get a free clinic every freaking day. I get a free meal every freaking day. I get a hot shower. I get a sauna. I get free gear. Like this is awesome. You know what I mean? And I think at sometimes when coaches are trying to get within a college football game, it's like sometimes they're looking at, maybe what they're making out of the gate or maybe some of the sacrifices that they're going to have to give up in order to achieve their goal. But I think just like you said, man, it can be a free clinic for you every day. And it's amazing how much coaches would pay just for that opportunity to sit in on a room every day, right, and to learn from.
And coaches. We see it like it's a great. I mean, we've done a great job of Coach Chesney had having access to high school coaches in the area and doing those things. I still think, man, when I hit the road, and I think we've had this conversation before, when I go recruiting or when I sit in the coach's office, especially in the area that I've recruited for a long time, there's certain coaches there, man. I go there to recruit, but really I go there to try to learn something what they did the year before. And there's just a lot of knowledgeable coaches around. There's a lot of free, free material or free access. It's just a matter of, you obviously being intentional about that meeting or what you want to get out of it. I think the other thing that I think it's got to be important is like your why, right? Especially if you're going to get into college coaching, I think the why has got to be more important than the paycheck, because the why is going to help you get through tough times in terms of the coaching profession when it gets hard, when you work for somebody that's not necessarily pleasant to work for, or you get yourself in situations where it's not, not easy. But I think at the end of the day, if your why in terms of why you're doing it is greater than the paycheck you're getting or what you're looking for, I think you can last a long time in this profession.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, sure, man. I appreciate your time, Coach.
Yeah.
Little hour 50 on a Sunday. I love it.
Well, I'm sorry,
love
man.
it.
I know I got long-winded on a couple of those, man, but
No,
shoot,
not at
man,
all. Not at all.
it's
I'll
always,
go
man.
back and edit it, and probably just from all the blank time, probably takes off probably 5-6 minutes just right out the gate. This app does, but I appreciate you hopping on. Sorry, I got my pup right here kind of bothering
No,
us,
you're
but
good.
got a ton of respect for you, Coach. Love you. Thanks for everything you've done for me. And
Love
then
you too, man. Proud of you.
yeah, I'll post this on Friday.
Sound good,
And
brother.
I know you're not a big social media guy, but I'm gonna tag in whatever you got going right now.
Sound good.
All right, Coach. You have a good
All
one.
right,
Tell
brother.
the family I said hi.
All right, man. I will do. All
Okay,
right.
hold on.
Oh.
Shoot.